I'm Genevieve Randall. Welcome to this Lincoln Symphony Orchestra pre-concert chat. Whenever you are watching it or listening to it, I am the music director at Nebraska Public Media, and we are so proud to support Lincoln Symphony Orchestra with these pre-concert chats. And we have a full house for this one this week. We've got Susan Platts, Esther Heidemann, both of whom are guest singers on this week's performance, as well as Tom Trenny, who is a great choral conductor, among many other things. He wears many hats. And our fearless music director of Lincoln Symphony Orchestra, Edward Polachek, joins us for this concert of Mahler's Resurrection. One piece and one piece only, but so much packed into one piece. Welcome to all four of you to this chat.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to be.
This is so fantastic. So I want to start a little bit, I think, with getting to know some of our artists. And I think we'll start with Tom, because we've got two guest soloists here, but I'm looking at my sheet next to me, and we have quite a number of guest singers on this performance. Tom, do you want to talk about who some of the ensembles are joining LSO?
Sure. Yeah. One of the wonders of, I think, of choral orchestral music is how ordinary people get to be part of these extraordinary artistic expressions and experiences. And what a privilege for me as a leader of a couple of these groups to get to be here with you today. I know that my students from Nebraska Wesleyan University will be involved. The choir from our Advent Music Chorus that's related to First Plymouth Church, as well as friends from the wonderful choir at St. Paul United Methodist in Lincoln, and the Concordia University a cappella choir, which is just totally fabulous from Seward. So we're all going to be together. I've been thinking a lot about, a number of my students, 31 of our choir students are freshmen, first years this year, and they've just come from show choir competition or solo and ensemble contest at their school, and have summer vacation. And then a few weeks later, they get to sing Mahler with these amazing soloists and with Maestro Ed. So I just can't even tell you what a thrill this is and what an uplifting opportunity this is for all of these extraordinary, ordinary people. So
I'm sure some of those new students are going to get on stage with the orchestra for their first dress and say, and now for something totally different.
Yeah.
I want to mention also that the two other course directors that are involved with this are Paul Robinson of St. Paul and Kurt, excuse me, from
Kurt von Kampen, yes.
Kurt von Kampen from Concordia. And I want to thank them for all their work. And thank you, Tom, for kind of coordinating this whole thing, because it's massive. It's massive.
It's a lot. It's a lot of moving pieces. It's a huge work. And if you've got the program in front of you, depending on when you are watching or listening to this pre-concert chat, you will see that there is a short pause between movements 1 and 2, and that this work is all there is on the program, because it's super long and it's huge and it's a lot. And I think, Tom, what you were saying about students leads me perfectly into something I was wondering. Esther, I noticed in your bio, of course, you teach, you've got master classes, you work with young people. Susan, I'm sure that you have done some teaching and coaching as well. What is this piece? This is such a massive piece for students to experience. I mean, this is not your 6-minute long choral piece that you first learn in school.
No.
What are some of the amazing lessons that some of the student singers and other singers on this program are learning from this piece? Who wants to take that?
I think just starting out, the range of this piece, the fact that there's so much time with just the orchestra and the drama of the orchestra, and to see how they can bring that out in the strings, how they can bring that out in the brass, the actual storyline of the piece when it's told through the orchestra as a singer on the stage. It is so dramatic. It gives you goosebumps through the whole thing. You have these uplifted sections, and then you have hell opening up beneath you. And it is just an incredible piece. Just to hear it should give you goosebumps as a choir member. I mean, it really just moves you in a way that nothing else can. And then just to start this piece so soft, and to feel like it's coming out of nowhere, and then Ed on the podium going, shh, shh, quiet, 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 even quieter. Like you think you're going to die because he'll barely let the sound out. But I mean, it's one thing as a soloist, but then as a choir member, you know, just to watch him dancing and moving on the stage and on the podium, you learn so much about the music. I mean, if you couldn't hear, you could tell everything that's going on just by watching him. So I think it's just going to be magical for somebody who hasn't worked with them before.
Anything to add to that?
I hope that's the case.
It's always.
Yes.
Give you some caffeinated mints. You'll be fine.
Susan, did you have anything to add to that? Or if you don't, what was your first exposure to this piece?
This was actually one of the first major pieces with orchestra that I sang, and I was in my early 20s, and I just remember just the experience of just being blown away. I mean, it really, this piece, like all of Mahler's works, it's a journey. And what I always love about his music is, for me at least, but I think for mankind, he so incredibly captures human emotions in his music, and he spans the complete highs and the complete lows and everything in between that we go through. And this symphony, it covers them all. So by the time you get to that last movement, to the end, the part with the choir, you've been through so much emotionally, and it's just it's what we experience in life, I feel, and that's why I feel it resonates so much with me. The first time I performed this, yes, I mean, I was just blown away, and I don't think I could fully comprehend all of the emotions that were swirling around in my mind and my body. But certainly I performed it a lot over my career, and it grows with you emotionally. It grows as we have happy experiences and we have sad experiences. This just grows with you. And it's still, considering the number of times I've performed this piece, I have never gotten on stage to perform it and gone, oh yeah, this piece again. It's just, every time it's a journey. It's really soul invigorating and cleansing, and just it's a beautiful experience.
And
I'm glad.
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say, and there couldn't be a more perfect piece for the week of 9/11.
No, I agree.
Esther, I'm glad you pointed that out. What are some parts of the piece that you think tie to that anniversary?
I think the whole piece ties to that anniversary. And I just think, the fact that you may be in pain, you may be in misery, your heart may be broken, but it's not going to stay this way, and you're going to rise again. For me personally, this is 9/11. This is, I sang this piece on the 1 month anniversary, the 3 month, the 6 month, and the 1 year anniversary in different places. And to me, this epitomizes 9/11 and the memories I had. I was in New York on that day. And to me, this is just like, it's all of those emotions just wrapped up in one piece.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Tom, I want to hear about your experiences with this piece as well as a choral director. What was your first exposure to Mahler's Second Symphony?
I got to sing it when I was in college with our student orchestra. Actually, we were singing it in Severance Hall, where the Cleveland Orchestra plays, which was an extraordinary place to give voice to something like this. And one of the things I remember was, as a choir singer, I was an organist and a pianist mostly. I wasn't necessarily a singer, but this composer was asking me to sing lower than I thought I could sing and higher than I thought I could sing, pretty much on any part I would choose in any of the tenor and bass parts. And so I think in hearing about the emotional highs and lows of the piece, I think that's also true in terms of the vocality of the songs and the ways that they stretch us. Some things are very, very slow, and some things are very, very low, and some things are very, very high, and so there are all these kind of extremities of emotion. And I know, as I'm sure a lot of you will remember, Mahler was kind of trying, I think in a way, maybe trying to convince himself that this message was actually true, because he was in this process of converting his faith perspective. And so you can kind of imagine how much more convinced he might have been after having gotten through the journey of writing this symphony and hearing his friends and his community play this kind of music. And so I think it can have a profound effect on people in that way still, in all kinds of ways. When our faith is shaken, it can remind us that there's hope, and so.
It's an aspect, I think, of this piece. Mahler himself is sometimes such a complex character to read about. Not everyone is a huge Mahler fan. There are some people who are dyed-in-the-wool, diehard Mahler fans. I think he can be kind of divisive in some ways. There's a description in the program notes of him as emotional and deeply complex, and I think that's totally true, right? But Tom brought up the spiritual aspect of this, because we've been talking about emotion and emotion and emotion, and there is this spiritual aspect of that, which I think sort of provides this structure. And Mahler did have a kind of narrative that he wanted us to follow with this. So maybe we can connect the emotion to the spiritual and to that structure. Who wants to talk a little bit about that structure and how that provides that connection?
I'm going to dive in here for a second, because the symphony itself was a problem child for Mahler. It took him many years to write it. And in fact, he wrote the first movement as a kind of symphonic work that totally stood on its own. He had no idea that it was going to be part of a symphony. It was years later that he decided to do that. And he knew that he wanted to add text somewhere in that symphony, but he couldn't figure out how. And at a friend's funeral, he heard some verses by Klopstock, and it was about the resurrection. And, if in the field of eschatology, which is, the reference to life after death type of aspect, almost every religion has some form of that, including the Jewish religion. There are many divisions within the Jewish faith that absolutely feel that, and some of the later sects in Judaism do not, but it is there. And what I love about this very piece is the text that he chose. And this forces me into a comparison with Beethoven 9. The text that he chose, although he used the word God, it doesn't necessarily mean in any religious sense. It could, and I think it's actually a universal word in that respect, where the word God is the God within, the God who is the supreme being. It's the God of the Jews, of the Catholics, of the Buddhists, of every various sect. And that's what I think I find so kind of universal about the text and about the music itself. The same way Beethoven chose his text very carefully for the ninth symphony, and has in some ways that same message of brotherhood, but I think that Mahler takes another step further with the idea of resurrection. You shall rise again. It was at that point when he discovered this text that he thought this symphonic poem, if you will, of the first movement, which is a very long movement and meant to stand on its own, is really about death and dying, and about how the torments of life are wrapped up in the demise of our life. And it's very funereal. You can hear the funereal marches throughout, the depths of despair and all that. He bookends it with the last movement, the fifth movement, of one of celebration, joy, and resurrection and redemption. In between, according to Mahler, there are these three gorgeous movements, which he calls an intermezzo. They're intermezzi, The second movement being one of a reminiscence of his childhood and the melancholy and the beauty of it, but then, you know, the tortures of what happened there, and then older age. And in the fourth move, in the third movement, then in the fourth movement, he borrows from himself, from Das Knabenwunderhorn, with a piece called Urlicht, which means just true light or primal light. And that's the introduction that we are given through Susan Platt's part, the mezzo, who talks about this little red rose, and the beauty of how he sets up the last movement is unbelievable. And without pause, after this, you know, complete revelation and serenity and just going into the ether, it's interrupted by the opening of the last movement, which is like all hellfire and brimstone all over again, until we are finally brought around by the belief, whatever that belief is. You have to believe, and that you will rise again, that you will live again. This work is so huge that it's like all the great things in life, you remember your first. You remember the first time you heard it, you remember the first time you sang it, you conducted it, you played it, whatever you do with it. Your first love, your first home, the loss of of someone important to you, all of that is connected into this symphony. And that's why I feel unbelievably blessed to have the opportunity to do this piece. Whenever I do, it's just, to me, it's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. And I cannot thank you all enough for the time and effort and joining us to make this an incredible spectacle, because that's what it's overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming. And, you know, the beauty.
This really is one of those things. I think you could listen to the piece over and over again and continue to discover new things. You could learn about all of our performers on stage and continue to discover new things, because before I am remiss in mentioning this, we've got some great people on the stage performing, and some great people in this chat. So do read in detail everyone's bios. Susan, you're amazing. Esther, you're amazing. Tom is amazing. Ed, of course, is amazing. We knew that. And so, but you know, we have only about 4 minutes left here in our pre-concert chat. And so do a deep dive. Whoever is watching or listening, go on a deep dive with all of these people and with this piece. But before we close out our chat, I always think it's interesting for audience to just get to know our performers in a different way than just with their performing in their bios. So I'd love to explore something that is not in your bio. Susan Platts, we are going to start with you. What is something you can tell us about you that is not in your bio?
Well, I'm not sure if this is in my bio, because I've tried to put it in more recently. I wrote a dessert cookbook. I'm not sure if it's in my bio. It's made it into some bios, and it's called Are You Ready for Dessert? ARIA. And wait for it, I created a confection and I gave it Mahler's name. So, you know, in Austria, you have the Mozartkuchen, and there's a wonderful confection called a Backwürfel, which I absolutely loved. And I came home and I have to recreate this. So I created called the Mahlerwürfel, and it's got jam in it, because Mahler liked to have he liked his jam, and usually had a different flavor every day. So it's called a Mahlerwürfel. And if I get baking before I come, I might bring some little boxes for people to try.
Oh, please.
That sounds absolutely perfect.
I have to show it. I have to show it to you, because I have it here and we have 2 seconds. So I'm not.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks delicious.
That is lovely.
So
look at like little petit fours.
I might be the only person who's created a dessert for Mahler, but I am a big Mahler nerd, so it only seemed fitting. So that's something. If it's in my bio, I'm sorry. I don't know which bios it's made it into. So that's something different about it.
Music and dessert connections are perfect. It joins peach melba and opera cake, and yeah, all of the greats. Esther, what is something that is not in your bio?
Well, related to Mahler, since she started us off so well, I actually have a facsimile of the original handwritten score from Mahler that was given to me by Gilbert Kaplan, who is a conductor who only conducts this piece. If you don't know him, he was a multi-millionaire who learned to conduct, taught himself how to conduct using different conductors, different lessons, and only conducts this piece. And we work together a lot, and one of the gifts he always gives is a facsimile of this piece. So you have the original handwritten and all the notes and stuff, which is just wonderful.
Beautiful.
I mean, what a piece to choose as your one and only to conduct.
I mean, honestly, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
For real, that is a choice. Well, we've got a minute left. Tom and Ed, you are up next, starting with Tom.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any Mahler stories that are quite that quite that interesting, but I can say something that's very special to us. We've been foster parents and have had a chance to adopt our children, and that's been a great kind of way of reframing my whole understanding of art and music and life and human connection. And so I hope my kids grow up understanding this idea of renewal and rebirth and hope that we sing about and play about all the time. So delighted to be a part of that.
That is beautiful, Tom. Thank you so much. And Ed, we've talked a lot, but what is something that's not in your bio that you could share with us?
I'll just say two things, just very, very briefly. I love, and I know they're not in my bio, I love to hug and I love to fish. Those are, you know, and the hugging part keeps me very social. The fishing part keeps me in my Zen mode. So it's kind of a nice thing to do. But all I want to say to Susan is, if she does not bring any baked goods for us, I'm going to transpose the whole thing up a sixth.
There you go.
Which will make the bass twos very happy, but
Oh my goodness. Punishment through music transposition. I don't know.
I know. I feel very threatened now, you see. Into the kitchen I go. I've got to go. Got to get baking.
I don't know how I feel about the ending then. I don't know how I feel.
No, he'll bring it back down for you. It's only, you know, I just gotta, you know.
You're gonna need a penny whistle for that one then.
Just Susan's parts. Oh my goodness. This has been so much fun, you guys. We could probably talk for an hour, but our time is up. And for everyone listening, I hope that you surely enjoy Mahler's Resurrection Symphony, his Symphony No. 2, with a powerhouse of performers on stage, not only Lincoln Symphony Orchestra, but the Concordia University A Cappella Choir, Auburn Music Chorus, Nebraska Wesleyan University Choir, St. Paul United Methodist Church Choir, under the direction of Paul Robinson, Kurt von Kampen, and Tom Trenny. Tom gets 2 of those ensembles to direct. Guest soloist, soprano Esther Heidemann, mezzo-soprano Susan Platz, and conductor Ed Polachek, 4 of whom have been my guest here on this pre-concert chat. I'm Genevieve Randall. Thanks to all 4 of you for joining us for the chat here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.